Morty. We've got to turn the project in early.
Hey everyone, how are we doing? Let's see who's in the chat. We're going to do the project today. Isabella's here. Can you please go over the task project? Yeah, especially where it asks us about using 0.5 as the hypothesized value. Good question right there. Let me go to the live chat. Get Mubot awake in the chat. Hey Jesse, good to see you here. We're going to focus a lot on the project. Let me know if you have any questions. Isabella, good to see you here too. And there we go. Getting Mubot awake. He always asks likes to update and stuff. He's like, can I update? And I say, sure, why not? I think it says this program wants to make changes on your computer. Okay, let's put the time right here. And stat 201 project getting started. Kind of do it all in one video right here today. So let's get started on the project. Let's do it. Okay, so I highly suggest turning in the project early. Now, that doesn't mean do it haphazardly and too quickly. Turn it in early, get the 8 points, but ask questions and watch this video and let us know. And more importantly, look at the rubric to see how you're going to be graded. That's very important right there. Like, go through the rubric, see what it says for executive summary, see what it says for future research. Go through each part of it right here. And we have right here, there'll be an update on the last part where it's going to be regression. So the last part is regression. Don't worry, we got that covered for you right here. But go through the rubric, make sure you have everything, and we'll also be looking at the assignment itself as we work through today. But one thing I want to point out right here is you have 4 different data sets to pick from. You have 4 different descriptions of the data sets. So each of these descriptions of the data sets will walk you through what the data set is. If you go to the donor documentation, which I'm opening up here in the background, we'll let it open up. Take a look at it right here and read what you have. Now, you can create your own context for this data. You can be like, I'm working for whatever organization you want. And, you know, use your own words. You don't have to start at I'm working for, so you don't think about writing exactly what I say. Think about how you want to phrase it, because that'll go in the executive summary. All that, like who you are, what you're doing, what you found, that'll go in the executive summary. So you've got here whether people donated, the last amount they gave, the age of the account, the age of the individual. So you can read through all these different things right here. And these are all actual real data sets with different real contexts, but you can come up with your own organization, your own ideas for it. So remember that as you're working through this, that you can kind of put this into your own ideas right here. Caitlin says, yeah, we'll be doing the regression coming up here soon. You got it, Caitlin. Thank you for being here, Caitlin. 100 points. So download one of these data sets right here. And I won't be using these data sets because I don't want to do any sort of like possibilities with the project. I want you to think about your own project, your own ideas. And that's what's key. So there's a warning I want to put out there. Big like, I need a flashing lights thing. I don't have that. I just have a hacker man over here. I got that. I got that. I don't have flashing lights though. So pretend there's flashing lights on the screen. Don't send anyone your project. Don't receive projects from people. Don't ask people for their project. Don't sit next to someone and look at their project. Don't take pictures of someone's project. Hey, Fiza, good to see you here. These are all things I've heard people say like, oh, I didn't send someone my project. My friend just took a picture. No, that's them taking your project. That's not good. And don't, I know it might be hard if you have your project, you're working on it, and if you stand up and you your friend walks over and you see them taking a picture of your project, I'd probably be like, hey, that's not cool. What are you doing? So I really hate scenarios where we have to send people to student conduct, and it happens a lot with the project. That's where we send. I'm bracing myself for end of the semester sending people to student conduct, and it's not fun doing that right before the final. Like right before the final, you're finding out, hey, I got to go to student conduct about this. So the best thing you can do, and maybe I've stopped 1 or 2 people from sending a project, taking a picture of a project or something like that, because we're pretty darn good at checking these things and finding these things. And so just don't do that. Don't sit next to someone and write the same things they're writing. That's not doing your own work. So if you're with a friend and they're working on the project and you say like, hey, how do you do this? That's great. And they walk over and they're like, oh, you want to click this on jump here? And oh, there's your confidence role you want to interpret. That's helping your friend. But if your friend's like, oh, look what I wrote right here, that's what you write, that's copying. There's a difference between your friend being like, here's how to kind of phrase it, but not looking directly at their project or reading directly what they wrote. But so we should see a lot of individual differences is what I'm getting at. Don't copy each other's work. With that said, let's get into the project, and we need to go over here to the Stat1 website, and let's put a new segment in the video right here, and let's start up the project. We got here 533 Stat 201 project, taking a random sample. So the first thing we're going to have to do in the project, and it's located right here, is we're going to have to take a random sample. So if you notice right here, we have you need 200 plus the last two of your UTID. So it's 200 plus the last two of your UTID. I need to tell Terry about that right there. So 200 plus the last two of your UTID. Frankly, it shouldn't get mad if you use 300. We just want to make sure you take a random sample, but do 200 plus the last two of your UTID right there. And so I'm going to open up a jump data set and show you how to take a random sample of 200 plus the last two of your UTID. So we're going to go to the diamonds data set, which I'll be using, and data set we used earlier on diamonds. And here is the diamond data set. The diamond data set has in it 1,000 diamonds. That's a lot of diamonds. And you can see here the identifier at the start. So that's an identifier variable. We got a quantitative variable right there. Categorical, 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 quantitative, categorical, categorical, categorical. Identifier is technically an ordinal variable here, but Jump doesn't have a classification for identifier. But identifiers are special case categorical variables that will not repeat. Quick question, do we use the prompt they give us? And you can play with, you can work with it. You can be like, this is my company, and or this is the company I'm working for. It's a general idea, and the prompt is to get you going that I'm working for a diamond manufacturer, and we've been selling diamonds for 10 years. And so, we have the best diamonds. We're going to do analysis right here. So you won't put the prompt in there, but these ideas will go into your executive summary. Does that make sense? How I've been working for Brian's Diamonds. Don't just put Brian's whatever, So we do kind of. It's not like you write the prompt exactly as is. You give your own spin on it, that this is, the company that I founded. You don't just say founded. I'm too afraid to say things that everyone might say, I founded this company this many years ago. So I'm trying to go away from those phrases. That way I don't put phrases out there that everyone says, like, I founded this company 5 years ago. And, think about your own imagination of like, the idea with the prompt is to get you going that this is a company that's well established, and you're going to give your goals. Like, this is not something new. This is your goals with the company, what you'll be analyzing. And you see the prompt even says like things you wouldn't put in a report, like the goal of the report is to analyze the data and communicate a statistical analysis in a way that people who have taken this class, have not taken the statistics class, will understand it. Use your imagination. So this is the prompt to you to get you going with your ideas. You don't directly take this. You don't say, I have been working for insert this for insert the data I've chosen. Both sections, you don't include, the prompt really isn't included. So here's the best thing to do. How do you know if you'll be graded on the prompt being included? Good questions, Isabel, right there. How do you know if you'll be graded on the prompt being included? Where should you go to see, will I be graded on the prompt being included? Let me change this to the prompt. How will you look at the rubric? Exactly. The rubric says nothing about the prompt, but the ideas within the prompt of what is being researched. So we have right here, the executive summary gives a summary of important details. So if you look at what needs to be in the executive summary, you need an action item, important details, and what is being researched. More of like who the company is clear from the start, who the project is for, and what is being analyzed. So I wouldn't directly copy the prompt. I'd use more imagination than what the prompt does of, I have been working for this company. Like, I wouldn't start with that. So does that make sense? You're not going to be graded on inserting the prompt's language into the report. You're going to be graded on using the ideas within the prompt to craft the executive summary. Now, here's the thing. While I'm not going to go through the executive summary yet, I could kind of. Yeah, so we'll do it in order. But the executive summary should be written when? So the prompt, yeah, thank you, Isabella. Great questions. The prompt is going to lead to the ideas that go into probably the start of the executive summary, but the majority of the executive summary will be written when? The majority of your executive summary will be written when? Because think about what you need. You will need who is the company, what's going on. It'll be written last, because when you get to summarizing key results, not just copy pasting them, when you get to summarizing key results, you will need your full report to do that. When you get to the action item, the thing that your company is going to do, you will need your full report to make decisions about what you're going to do. So you wouldn't summarize a report you haven't written. So even though the executive summary is first, which is going to be a kind of compact summary of the full report, are there examples we can look at? Because when we had to do the summary for our previous report. Yeah, and the executive summary should be graded, and I'll make sure those grades are out. So the executive summary is going to be the compact nature of your report. And are the grades currently out? Let me see if my grades are published for my classes. So 2 seconds right here. I'm going to bring this over to the other screen. And I'm going to open up and make sure grades are published, because sometimes the graders don't hit publish on the grades. And so I'm going to make sure your grades are actually published. Because one of the graders messaged last night and said, I'm done. I was like, hey. All right, 2 seconds right here. And that'll tell you, especially because you'll be graded by the same person, if you are in line with what they say an executive summary should be. And you can always question your grade. You can always say, Canvas takes so long to load when you have a lot of students. Oh my gosh. They didn't publish. Okay, here we go. Post grades. We are posting grades for one section there. And posting grades for another section. There we go. Okay, cool. So grades should be posting as we speak right there. They were not published. Yeah, now they should start to be available in probably seconds right there. And let me close out of those. Well, they're on the other screen, so can't be seen over there. But you should be able to see your grades, and that'll tell you how you did on your executive summary and let you know if you're covering these key ideas. Once again, if you have any questions on grades, you think you weren't graded fairly, make sure to ask your instructor. They are the final say on it, and they can tell you whether they agree or disagree with the grader. But the big thing is the prompt, which is what we're talking about right here, is going to be kind of the start of your project, but don't directly copy it. The ideas of the prompt will go into the what. The ideas within the prompt, like who is the company and what are we analyzing, will go into the what. The ideas of the prompt, of your imagination, who are we, what are we doing? You can say longer than 3 years if you want. You can be the founder of the company if you want. The idea is you're not newly hired. We want to give you some seniority in the company. Because imagine you walk into a company and say, we're changing things up. That's, the idea of 3 years right here is that you've been at this company a little while. So maybe the company's only been around 3 years. You're one of the original people at the company. It is your imagination, your way of writing this that kind of leads to where the report goes. So you're using the ideas in the class, and that's the point of this, to show how it could be used in the business world, which is one of the key ways we use analytics. We use it in a lot of other worlds, medical worlds, sports use analytics all the time. There's really sports analytics. So with this right here, the prompt is going to get you started. But here's the thing. Now we get to the executive summary. So let's take a note right here and do executive summary. So what is this executive summary? Okay, so for the executive summary, please remember, 4-letter word right here. See if we put in the chat for some points. Write your executive summary when. So you probably need to come back to this. You will write the majority of your executive summary when. So you could start it. You could start your executive summary last. What can you do with your executive summary right now? Well, with your executive summary, you could write the opening to it, the start of like, hey, this is our company. This is what we're doing. Use more better. Let's just do that. Use better language than that. But the idea of who your company is, what are they doing? This can be done for task 1.1. So you can get 5 points done of the project right there. You don't want to give minimum details. Look at what the graders will be clicking right here. It's clear from the start of the project who the company is and what they'll be analyzing and who the project is for. Who the project is for, so like your company, and what you'll be analyzing. That you can get done. The parts you will need to come back to is the summarizing of key results. Are we supposed to get comments on the data analysis? If you have questions, let me know. They should have clicked the button. The button should say where the comments are. So if you disagree with the comment that it says you are under, let me know. And I can look at it and regrade it. And probably email me. That might be the best way. But yeah, if you have questions, let me know. I can always look and regrade stuff. So when you are doing your summary of results, think about this. What might be something you would summarize from? Ooh, let's do this one. We haven't done this graphic in a long time. What is something you might summarize from this Pareto plot? What might be a key detail from this Pareto plot? Great job, Caitlin, right there. What might be a key detail from this Pareto plot? I usually like it if it's, I don't care for the thing to go all the way to the top. And can we get the numbers over the bars? That's a bummer. Well, it does label that, which, sure. What's the cumulative percent? So this is not technically skewed. So this is, remember, and good questions, fees are right there. So this is, if we are choosing to do students, does it have to be a company? It could be a class. You could say you're working as an educator, Savannah. You could do that. So you could do that. That's decent. The variable clarity is a categorical variable. So bars have no order to them. That's kind of the trick and where people oftentimes think there could be skew where there's not. Bars have no real order to them because you could just reorder the bars, right? So a Pareto chart is a bar chart that is what? A Pareto chart is a bar chart that has been put in order. And the most common clarity of diamond was the SI1 diamond clarity, which I have no idea what that is. But the SI1 clarity diamond represented 23.3% of our diamond sales. So that might be something I could say right there about, and no one will be using the diamond data set, so don't use the diamond data set. But hey, DD, good to see you here. The SI1 diamond was shown to be our number one sales of diamond with 233 sales, representing 23. I probably wouldn't double say it right there. I'd probably just say representing 23.3% of our sales, almost a quarter of our sales. Yep, Fiza, great job, Fiza, right there. And so this is something I might bring into the executive summary because I could say, like, you know, this is our top selling diamond. Like, we found that this was the top selling diamond. Does that make sense? Like, does that sound like that'd be important to a jewelry company? Like, our top selling clarity of diamond was this diamond. We might need to phase out, maybe an action item would be to phase out the I1 diamonds, but maybe those I1 diamonds are going to people who really want them. By any chance, where can we find TAs for our class? I'm the final say on grades, so just let me know. Because you don't, and I guess the TAs, they might be they're on Discord, some of them, but the best thing to do is just go to me because I can always choose. You're welcome, Savannah. So I get the final say on grades. So yeah. And so right here, we're thinking about what would be brought into the executive summary and maybe our top selling diamonds, our lowest selling diamonds, things like that. When we do bar charts or Pareto plots, those are going to be some things that really we would bring as important details. Now, what do you notice with the executive summary that I'm always quoting? I said, the I1 diamonds were our lowest selling diamonds with only 1.3% of sales. When I'm doing the executive summary and finishing my report, I'm always giving what? You heard me say it right there with the I1 diamonds only represented 1.3% of our sales. Thank you, Fiza. I am always giving the numeric backing. I am always giving the numeric backing. Now, don't worry. You can come up with your own action items. So remember, I said we might need to, exactly, Jesse, right there. I said we might need to phase out the I1 diamonds. Like towards the end of the report, great job, Savannah. Towards the end of my executive summary, I might say this leads me to believe we might need to phase out like my whatever. I don't want to say too much. Like I don't want to phrase it too much that people write exactly what I write. So I'm trying to like use a whole different report with whole different context. And my idea to phase out the I1 diamonds is a what? Based on the data, because it was connected to the data on the low sales of the I1 diamonds. That is my what? To phase out those diamonds. Yeah, you don't want to think it's a summary, so you don't want to take every single number in your report and bring it up to the summary. You want the key big ideas, like the key results. So when you think about this right here, important results. So you don't want to take every single thing you found throughout the report. You want to be like, what's the big ideas? And if you're going to tell someone an action item that you're going to phase out the I1 diamonds, you probably want the data in the executive summary to back that decision. Does that make sense, Visa, right there? Like, if I have an action item in the executive summary to phase out the I1 diamonds, which the action item wouldn't be in the report would just go through and give you all the analytics on it. But the action item will be in the executive summary being like, here's what we found about the I1 diamonds. We found out that they were this % of the sales, and we think we should phase them out. That's going to be the action item right there, is to phase them out. The action item is not going to be in the report. That's just the analytics. So understanding the point of the executive summary, like who's my company, Diamond Company, talk about it a little bit more. What did we find? I started talking about the characteristics of diamonds. What are we doing because of the data we found? That's the goal. Who are we? Who are we and what are we doing? What did we find out? And then what are we going to do? And be specific. I usually, and I never like it when they take off points for too many sentences. I mean, if you give a 5-page executive summary for a 2-page report, we should take off points. But I think generally your executive summary should be somewhere between 15 to 30% the length of your report, your summarizing report. And it varies. Someone could write a 15% reduction of their report and do a great job. Someone could write a 15% reduction. It'd just be nothing like, my company is Brian's Diamonds. We look at diamonds. No, to be more specific. We found things out about diamonds. We found out this diamond sold a lot. No, be specific. Be very specific. Use numeric backing, and then make the action items very clear on what your company's going to do. You're kind of speaking as someone with authority within this company. Good stuff right there. So what is the one thing we haven't done yet that's going to be very important to your project? When you're doing your project, you need to make sure you're working with a what sample. We love it here. You know it. Everyone knows what's about to happen as I take the note right here. You need to make sure on the project you are working with a what? Marking the video. I used to do these later at night. You're working with a random sample. So with a random sample right here, let's go ahead and do that. To get a random sample, and I'll open up the data set. Randomness. Meatball loves some randomness. So we're going to go right here and go to table subset. Table subset. Do 200 plus the last 2 of your UTID. So you want to go right here to where it says random sample size. And with random sample size, you're just going to type in 200 plus the last 2 of your UTID. So whatever the last 2 of your UTID is, you'll put that right there. And now you can actually hit OK, or click the button. Either works, or I hit enter sometimes. Probably click the button is the best way to do it. And now the way you know you've done this, so probably make sure you've done this, is if down here you see 200 plus the last 2 of your UTID. Make sure when you're working on your project at all points, you see that right there, say the number you selected to begin with. So that'll let you know you're working with your random sample. Also, a lot of your graphics, if we go over here to something like cut, you'll see right here that there's 201 total observations. So make sure as you're working on the project, you see this number throughout, not the original number of 1,000 or whatever it was. This will ensure you're working with a random sample. So one more time, tables, subset, and under subset, random sample size, and then 200 plus the last 2 of your UTID. So with that, we have our random sample now, and we can start working on the project, the actual parts of it. So here we go with the first question, which is going to be the one sample Z. Let me mark this in the video. One sample Z. So the one sample Z, what does this mean? Well, just a really quick kind of theory backup on it, because we should know what the one sample Z is. There's some confidence intervals. Okay. One sample Z. This is going to be chapter 14/15. Used to test or make confidence intervals for the true proportion. This is the one sample Z, sometimes called a proportions test. So we use the Z for proportions. The equations that you're having Jump do for you are the following equations. Jump will be solving for you P hat minus P naught over P hat. Oh my gosh. Steven, I make some errors every once in a while. P naught Q naught over N square root. That is equal to a Z. And the confidence interval formula is, we'll go with a nice like green right here. And the confidence interval formula is p hat plus or minus z star. We always point out these two z's are not the same thing. The one has a star, meaning based on percent confidence level, and then square root p hat q hat over n. So the confidence interval is on the right, and the test is on the left. Another important thing to note with these is they have 3 conditions. Randomly select your data, less than 10% of the population is selected, and success failure, meaning we have at least 10 successes, at least 10 failures. So this is kind of your review sheet right here, which I want to also put in here. So if you're wondering what we're learning, what we're reviewing, this is used to make confidence intervals for the true proportion, or do tests to test or make confidence intervals for the true proportion right there. The notation is, and I'll read it off just right here. This is the sample proportion. Like if I find out 2 people own dogs out of 5, that's going to be 40% of people own dogs. This is the hypothesized proportion. Like if I believe 50% of people own dogs, that's not from data. That's just a belief, a hypothesis about the proportion of people own dogs. This is the complement of the hypothesized proportion. This is my sample size of how many people I talked to. And the z statistic in this instance is the difference between the values standardized right there. So the z statistic is called a test statistic in that instance, where it's a standardized difference, and we'd use that to find the p-value. The p hat right here is the sample proportion, which is the estimate of the true proportion for the confidence interval. The z star is going to be used as the z for a certain percent confidence. P hat, once again, is the sample proportion, which over here is the same thing, but it's being used in the standard error. So this is the standard error of p hat. Technically, this, because it uses p naught, is the standard deviation of p hat. Very small difference. This uses p hat, so it's a standard error. This uses p naught, which is assumed to be the truth, so it's standard deviation. That's not so important for the test. It's just a very small minor detail, I consider it to be. This is the complement of the sample proportion. So if we find 2 out of 5 people own dogs, 40% of people own dogs, then the complement is 60%. P hat and Q hat are complements, just like P naught and Q naught are complements. And sample size down here again. So that is just a quick rundown of what we're doing, but JMP's going to do all the work for us. So let's think about what the question asks. And let's go over here. Pick a 2-level categorical variable of interest to you. So 2-level means there's 2 answers to the questions. So I say, do you want to buy this item? Yes or no. That's 2 levels. It's 1 question. So variable means a question we're asking, and 2 levels means yes or no, which means, just like we saw with the formula, that something is the level or is not the level. So if you look at this, we have it either conforms to it or doesn't conform, like probability of it, proportion of it, or probability not of it, proportion not of it. So we are satisfying that with our equations. Now I'm going to have to do a little tricky stuff right here to get what I need with this data. So you will not be doing this. You will not be doing this. I don't know why I did that. You will not be doing what I'm doing right here. I'm going to compare 2 types of diamonds because I need a 2-level. All the data sets we have for you have 2-level categorical variables. So I'll show you now. I have a 2-level categorical variable, which can be seen right here. Take a moment to see if you see the 2-level categorical variable on my screen. You can kind of search through your data by clicking this button right here. And remember, you want something red because red means it's categorical. Blue means it's quantitative. That's technically an ordinal categorical variable. So we have right here, it's also the identifier. We have the 2-level categorical variable right here, ideal versus very good. So now we only have 133 diamonds. Don't subset your data like I did. Your data, so it's a yes, no question. It can be. So you could think of this, is it ideal or not ideal, only if we're selling these 2 types of diamonds. So yes, no is 2-level, but this is currently, does that make sense, Visa, right here? This is a 2-level categorical variable because it has 2 answers. Does that make sense? There's only 2 levels. Levels just means answers to a question. So when you go right here and you go to, well, let's see what it asks. Identify the level of variable you will consider a success. Okay, so I am interested in the, so I don't want to say things too exactly. I'm going to identify ideal as a success, but you might use your own wordings. Don't say exactly what I say. You know, think about, there's a billion ways to say that. My level of success will be this. What I'm interested in looking at is this. The thing that my company cares about is this. Yep, the project, do we have to say we found the success failure? Well, yeah, I'll show that here, Savannah. Good questions. So you're just going to identify which of these you care about. That's what a success means, is the thing you care about. The thing you want to understand is a success, and the other thing is a failure. Not that it's bad or good, but it's like, what do I care about? What do I want to see? Which level is of interest to me? So I'm going to identify ideal as the one I care about. So now we've identified that. So we've said how we identify it. So create a bar chart. So that's important right there. Create a bar chart and frequency table with the variable you choose. Make sure your bar chart is in a horizontal layout and the bars have values labeled either counts or percentage for each level. Make sure you do that. The frequency table should include the counts, proportion, percent of each level included. Note Mac users on dark mode may have problems, so make sure to add that in. I've got a video showing how to do that on Mac if you're stuck on that. Search Saturn channel on Discord for assistance. Let's see right here. 1,000 points of anyone. Well, I can find it. Let me show you. I'll put it in the chat. If you're watching this video right now, I don't want to. Let me get the dark mode video because it is a pain. Yeah, here it is. We'll watch it here together. So here's the video on how to fix it. So it's in the stream now. Here's the video.
Having an issue with the numbers appearing above your bars, there's a way to fix this. Let's go ahead and make a graphic here with a bar chart and add in the counts and put the labels on. Now these labels will appear, but let's see what the problem is. We're going to go here to the Apple and go to System Preferences. Now we're going to go to the upper left button and click on General. Under General, we can change from light to dark mode, and you'll notice when we go to dark mode, the numbers disappear. So going back to light mode will make the numbers appear, and then you can click Done and take your screenshot.
Okay, well,
So let me expand that section.
To Professor Paris's videos. So that is how to do it right there. That is how to turn it off dark mode, and sometimes the numbers don't appear. I don't know why. Maybe they've updated Jump to fix that, but we've seen issues with Macs on that. So let's go ahead and make this graphic right here. So we need to go back to our diamonds data set, and we're going to make the graphic now. So here we are. Analyze, distribution, analyze, distribution. Boop. Double click the variable you want. Make sure it's red. Make sure it has 2 levels. Red means categorical, 2 levels up there. Click OK. Now, it shouldn't be, we'll see right here, and I believe it doesn't have that problem. Maybe you have to turn off dark mode on Windows. I haven't seen that problem yet. Click right here, click stack. That's the top right arrow, and click stack. And then once you've stacked it, click the second red arrow right here and go to histogram options, count axis. So histogram options, count axis. Second red arrow again, histogram options. Oh, we don't need this. Show counts, right? There we go, show counts. And show counts. There we go. I like to make it a little bit bigger. And then go right here and go to histogram colors if you want. Histogram options, histogram color, and you can make it a nice purple. Good deal. So it's all about what you want right here, but this is what you should go towards. It's what you should get. You should have a histogram that has the counts over it. And what does this mean? Think about it. 82 of the 133 diamonds sold. Remember, I did have to subset to do this like your guys' project. 82, which represents 61.6%, and 51 right here. Think about how to word this, but that's the percent out of the total. That's the count out of the total. So these are the total amount of diamonds right here with the 133. That's the number. That's the probability, percent. That's the number. That's the probability, the percent. So in technical terms, when you think about this, and let's bring it over here, what you'll be looking at right here is... Let's look at the notation on this. And once again, we're using this to understand what we're doing. Got to close down Word eventually. Right here, we have the following. We have X, oh, I want it ideal, right? X, and that's P hat. This is N, and this is technically N minus X. We don't really do that, but that's the amount of failures, which would be 133 minus 82, and this is Q hat. So in the notation format right there, I probably should have zoomed in a little bit more to do that N minus X. So, because that's the sample size minus the amount of successes. So that's N minus X. So there's the notation next to the numbers, the sample proportion, the complement of the sample proportion, the sample size, the amount of successes, and the sample size minus the amount of successes right there. Now, we also should know For the test, x over n equals p hat. So you could plug in your numbers right here. These are things you should not put in the report, but what we need to know from this output, and that will equal 0.616 right there. So that is the sample proportion, and we're just understanding kind of how we could do this all by ourselves if we needed to, or understanding for the test how we could do this. Once again, what you're going to be writing about in the report is about the diamonds, right? So you're going to tell people the interesting things you found out about these diamonds. So create a bar chart, put the labels over it, frequency table, everything is here in our screenshot, good stuff. Dark mode, all that good stuff right there. Next, create a confidence interval of any percent of your choosing other than 95%. Include a separate screenshot of the confidence interval. So when you create a confidence interval, you'll be right here and you'll click this button. Now notice I am clicking 95%. Yes or no in the chat, will you click 95%? This is one of those moments. Will you make a 95% confidence roll? If someone is watching this video on mute, I'm doing this because no, don't make 95% confidence. You're gonna make something other than that. So I'm making a 95% confidence interval so you don't make a 95% confidence roll because you don't do exactly what I do. But you'll do some other interval. You can click other, you can click any of the other buttons. You'll make your own confidence interval. I'm making 95% though. So don't do 95%. If you have 95% here, you will lose points. So you can just, there's the other buttons to click and you can make other confidence intervals. So here is our screenshot right here. And we've actually just done, I'm gonna go through our 1,000-word documents. We've just done the equation for ourselves that jump is going to do. So if you look at that equation up there, we did the equation on the right, but using jump. And that's what's really great about using statistical software is that this equation right here, we should do it in green, right? The answer to it can be found, because we're doing ideal, can be found more specifically right there. So there a confidence interval that would be too small? Probably don't pick anything lower than 80. 80 is really the lowest I see people go. So that is my I am 95% confident. The true proportion of diamonds that are ideal that we sell is contained in the interval 53.17% to 69.48%. Or you could do it as a decimal. Once again, every time we do an interpretation of a confidence interval, we always do, and we'll go back to this a lot, I am blank percent confident that the true, and then right here, oh, it even said proportion. Oh, it knows me. Did it see that? Is contained in the interval blank to blank. So when we do our interpretations, and this is where probably a lot of people write the same things that I write because it's pretty standard here. This is where we don't get people for cheating. We'll either say true proportion, true mean, or difference between the means. So these are different chapters right here, different things we've learned when we're doing confidence intervals for the mean, proportion, or difference between the means. This is a categorical variable, so we're trying to figure out the difference in the true, or excuse me, we're trying to figure out the true proportion of ideal diamonds. So you need the context. Don't just say true proportion. You need the context down here on what you're talking about and take a look where it gives you the confidence level. So I am 95% confident. And so since we're talking about the cut of the diamond, we're talking about a proportion. The proportion of ideal diamonds is contained in the interval, and this is your lower, and this is your upper. So that's kind of a standardized format we use. So a lot of people will probably have this, but I use the standardized format to make sure people are interpreting it correctly, and that is definitely not something we consider cheating to use that standardized format. Interpret what the interval means for the reader, and exactly what we just did right there. Next, use 0.5 as the hypothesized value of P0, as the value your company believes to be the true proportion of what you have is considered a success in the population. Clearly explain to the reader the point of the test you're performing and why it is important to your company. Without using statistical notation, explain the null and alternative hypothesis of a does not equals hypothesis test. So with this, here's what we will do. We are actually going to look at the statistical notation to begin with right here. So we're going to go back in time a little bit here and do the hypothesis test. So here we are, and the hypothesis test is on the left. So the hypothesis test is The null is that the true proportion is equal to 50%. The alternative is, and don't write these down on your project, this. Now, what does this mean? Oh, yes, man, this is good right here. I currently believe what? Null is, I currently believe that the what of the ideals, so that is something ideal diamonds, believe, this is my belief, is, how does that read as a sentence? What is our null? What does this mean? Null is current belief. When you see null hypothesis, it is my current belief that the what? I currently believe that the proportion of ideal diamonds that we sell is 50%, right? I currently believe that we sell 50% ideal diamonds. That 50% of our sales are ideal diamonds. Does that make sense? And then we're looking for evidence. So the alternative is what you're looking for evidence of. I'm looking for evidence that the, as you can see right there, is not that. So when you think about it in words and what you're saying, P is true proportion. We might even throw there true proportion or the actual amount. Probably throw in true or actual because this is a test about the true proportion. So I'd probably throw in true proportion right there. Words like that. I don't want to write too much, but if you break down, don't put the notation. If you break down what it means, my current belief is that the, throw in there what we're talking about is equal to 50%. We want to be able to read this as a sentence we talk about a lot. So to do this test right here, we go back to our output and we're going to remove the confidence interval. And let's go here to test proportion. Where is it? There it is. Test probabilities. Under test probabilities, we're going to enter in 0.50 for both of them and click done. And there we go. So what you get right here are the p-values. There are two tests technically done, but we're going to look at the Pearson test right here. It's not bad to look at either. I just prefer the Pearson test right here. It's going to be very similar to what we do in Chapter 19. So with this right here, our null hypothesis was that it is 50%. Our null hypothesis is, or was, that it is 50%. What would you do to the null hypothesis? What should you do? When the p-value is lower than alpha, which is assumed to be 0.05 unless otherwise stated, when the p-value, so we're looking at this test specifically right here, it even says if you hover over it. So what are we going to do? Which one are you wondering about, Savannah? So this is how we get the p-value right here. It gives it right here in jump. So what do we do since the p-value is very small? The p-value is 0.000.007187. Yep. You put in the 0.5 exactly. Yep. See where it says hypothesized probabilities? Put in 0.5 for both of them. And so what do we do to the null hypothesis here? When the p-value is lower than alpha, we say when the p-value is low, reject the null, and low means lower than alpha. So we are going to reject the null hypothesis, and we have evidence for the alternative. But let's think about how this coincides with our confidence interval. What do you notice about 50% and the interval? So remember, we are rejecting 50%, right? The null had us, or the p-value had us reject 50% as a true value. So then what? Yep, we're rejecting it, right? What about the confidence interval also makes you reject 50% as the true value? What about the confidence interval? And it'd be the same as using an alpha level of 0.05. So what about the confidence interval has you reject 50% as a true value? Why would the confidence interval come to the same conclusion at the 0.05 alpha level? So if we use an alpha of 0.05 here, and the reason I'm using alpha because that's 1 minus alpha, so this is an alpha of 0.05, making a 95% confidence interval. Why does the confidence interval come to the same conclusion that 50% is not a believable value? Why is 50%? Think about our interpretation. I am 95% confident the true proportion of ideal diamonds that we sell is contained in the interval 53 to 69%. Why is 50% really not believable? Why is it rejected via the confidence interval? The confidence interval comes to the same conclusion because 50% is not in the interval. So since 50% is outside of a 95% confidence interval, we know it can be rejected at the 0.05 level on the two-tailed does not equals test, which is what we ran right there. Exactly, not in the interval, so we can reject it at the, and I want to point this out again, a confidence interval right here, if you have 95% confidence, will come to the same conclusion mechanically as a two-tailed test. So that's the two-tailed does not equals alternative, where the alpha is equal to 0.05. Very important right there to know that, especially for the test. So once again, we're understanding the material a little bit more and also the test. Finally, use the confidence interval, write the conclusion of the hypothesis test, and explain how it assisted in the process. Exactly what we just did. So do people feel really good? We've now done a good portion of the project. We're going to do the one sample T next, but that's maybe one of the longer parts. We're 35 points into the project, so we're a third done, and we even reviewed for the test, which I really like. I try to put that in these videos so we know what's going on. So now we're on to the one sample T. Let's talk about the one sample T. Now, we love him. He's awesome. I feel a little lost on how to explain test proportion. Well, here, before we go to the one sample T, so when we do this, what does the null say? Like, in your own words, your company what? My company, with the context of my company. What does this say right here? So that's what we're testing. So that means this is our what right now? Like, how would we explain that to someone right there? That just what I've circled right there. Because this is what is the value being tested. That value in notation is what? That 0.5 in notation is what? I would screenshot the test probabilities too. In the for the technical report. I would take a screenshot of it to show it. Not quite P, because we don't know what the truth is, right? Very close, Jesse. It's not P though. That 0.5 is not P, it's P naught. Because that is the hypothesized or tested probability right there. That value right there is P naught. So because we don't know what the truth is, right? If we knew what the truth is, we wouldn't be doing tests about the truth. Well, not quite. Good answer, Savannah, right there. We'll throw 100 points. So the way this reads is, see, I'm too afraid to say, don't write it. Please don't write exactly what I say. Don't write word for word what I say. Please don't do that. Don't write exactly word for word I say. My company currently believes that the proportion of ideal diamonds that we sell is 50%. Does that make sense? So don't write exactly what I say. Like, don't change one word or two what I say. Put it into your own words, your own way of saying it. It is a current belief of this company. Yo, Andy, what's up right there? It is a current belief. We currently hold this belief that the proportion of ideal diamonds that we are selling is 50%. Like, someone at our company just believes this. Don't write what I say. Don't change one word. Don't do that. Think about how you're going to explain this to people. Like, how it'll be in your own words about what your company is thinking right here. So this is what the company currently believes, kind of without any data. So you walk in and someone's like, hey, yeah, we sell about 50% ideal diamonds. You're like, oh, well, let's test that. Let's see if that's the case. And when I run the analytics on it, what do the analytics come back with? The analytics come back with, there's evidence that we don't sell 50% because we hypothesize, P naught, the hypothesized proportion is 50%. And we have evidence to reject. Yep, awesome right there. Thank you, Savannah. 1,000 points, Savannah. Keep asking those questions. That's why I try to pause at the end. And if you're here, you get your questions answered. These videos are for people later too. But if you're ever wondering, just drop by live and I will try to pause for each question and work on those because we've got another hour and you'll be shocked. That's more than enough time to get through the project. So right there, it is what the company currently holds as true. But there's sufficient evidence to reject that belief, the way we talk about it. And you can even throw that in there. Also, please look at the rubric at all times. But now we're on to the one sample T. So what do we say about Mr. T if you're doing drugs? One sample T. And we're going to have to show the famous video right here. Anytime I get an opportunity to show this, because probably more people are going to watch this. All right, here we go. feel like that one. So many versions of this. Okay, we'll play this one. Okay. One time I played it and it like flashed a message or something. It wasn't bad. Okay, so here's the important message from Mr. T that we all have to know. Mr. T, awesome guy right here, but we have to know this from him.
Get angry.
Oh.
I get angry just thinking about it makes me mad. Little kids doing drugs, it turns my stomach.
You do not make Mr. T mad at you. That's what we say. So just so you know, we all love Mr. T here. Shouts to Mr. T. Just like I gotta shout out my childhood heroes. So with Mr. T right there, we have a saying in our class. Mr. T is mean if you're doing drugs. So why do we say Mr. T is mean? Because anytime we hear the T distribution, anytime we hear the T, we know we're dealing with what's. If we hear T, we know we're dealing with what. Like if you hear T, just you hear T. T goes with mean. Exactly. So we think Mr. T is mean if you're doing drugs. Super nice guy otherwise. So with this right here, the one sample T, you might be wondering, what does the one sample part of it mean? The one sample means you take one group. So if we were to have here people buying diamonds, we might look at something like the price of diamonds. So we could just analyze price right here. If you notice, this is one group of people, and we are thinking about the price, which is quantitative for that one group. We're just asking people, what's the price of diamonds you buy? So it's just one variable being looked at. Now to compare this with the two sample T, so once again, T means mean, so we know we're dealing with a quantitative Y variable of interest. So the Y variable of interest right here is this. But when you get to two samples, you might be comparing two groups. That's what the two samples is. So two samples means, and you would have like here, this would be n equals 3 because there's 3 people. This would be the first group has 3 people in it, and the second group has 2. And t-test isn't going to work out so well with this data, but we'll just run the analytics right now. And then you would be comparing the price and the differences in price between the two groups for people who maybe buy two different types of diamonds. So the one sample t-test is used to analyze a quantitative variable of interest. We can make confidence intervals and we can do tests. So we'll not focus on the two sample here, which would mean you have two groups you're comparing. It doesn't mean sample size 2. It means there's two samples. Sample 1 and sample 2, there's two groups. And technically the two sample t-test is a categorical X and a quantitative Y. That's usually where people get tripped up on it because you have to have two groups. You're splitting the data apart and then you're comparing it on the quantitative Y of interest price right there. So the equations for the one sample T are going to be used to test the true mean or create confidence intervals for the true mean. And the conditions are random, less than 10%, and nearly normal. There's the conditions. Next, we can look at the equations. The equations are going to be, we'll do the test over here with y bar minus mu naught. Notice that's the sample mean minus the true mean over the sample standard deviation over the square root of n. This is equal to a t with n minus 1 degrees of freedom. Then the confidence interval is y bar plus or minus t star, because we pick it based on the level of confidence, with n minus 1 degrees of freedom. Thank you to William Gossett, Guinness Beer, for the t distribution, and then s over square root of n. So we see the equations on the screen. Now do remember, as we always say, this is not the same t as this. This t over here is a standardized or a difference standardized. That's the difference between the two values up top, and that's the standardization of the difference. The t over on the far right in green is based on a level of confidence, hence why it has the star. So you would never take this t really and input it over here. Those are two different values. Great job, Fiza, right there. One has a star and one does not, denoting that we pick it based on a level of confidence. So that's kind of the overview, and I want to make sure you have some notes and understanding of what we're doing and why, but we're going to let Jump do all the work for us. So let's look at the project right here and see what they want us to do. Pick a quantitative variable. Quantitative because Mr. T is mean if you're doing drugs. Create a histogram, making sure it has a count access and is in horizontal layout. Include a screenshot. Is there a way to look up the past quotes? Oh, good. I could show them you here at the end if you want. You can always do random quote, and you'll get a random quote. But yeah, Jesse, good question right there. Create a histogram. I can remember a lot of them. Histogram, count axis, horizontal layout, include a screenshot, the visualization, including summary statistics and quantiles. So we're going to go back to our data. And in our data, we need to use a quantitative variable, which is blue. Little star sometimes means it's got extra stuff on it. It's got units. So we actually added, I think, dollars right there or something to it. But star doesn't mean, it just means extra stuff. There was a quote on that, but I can't remember. Oh, yeah, let's look at the end, Jesse. Good question. So I'm going to go to Analyze, Distribution. Analyze, Distribution. Now select just one variable. So you want to double click one variable like price, and then you want to click OK. Boop. Now we're going to go to the top right arrow, and on the top right arrow, we're going to go to stack. Top right arrow, stack. That puts it in horizontal layout. I'm going to grab the edge of this, make it a bit bigger because I like it to be nice and neat right there. Then we're going to go to the second right arrow again, or this time to the second right arrow, and go to histogram options, count axis right there. I'm not a big fan of putting the counts over the bars. The grader should not take off points. I don't like seeing histograms with counts over bars. The instructions do not say that for the histogram. They do say it for the bar chart. So if you notice right here, we get the histogram visualization, and we also get the quantiles and the summary statistics. You will need to take a screenshot of all of this. So you can also, it's worth noting, actually edit a lot of things in Jump. So if you wanted to call this price of diamonds, you could, whatever you want to call it. So there's always this extra ability to double click stuff and edit it, even your access, and change it. So get the picture how you want it. Change your histogram color if you want. I always do. Histogram color. If I can change things, I like to do that. I wonder if, don't do this. I think shadow histogram is pretty cool. It makes it like a, oh, that's kind of cool. Oh, we can't do that though, probably. Dang it. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. I know. There's a lot of cool things you can do. Don't do that. The graders will get confused. They shouldn't technically take off points, but don't do it. We don't want the graders being like, what did this person do? Yeah, it might not be as practical. It's I don't know about shadow history. Like I can't explain it. That's probably why I shouldn't use it. I can't. Someone say, why does it look this way? I say, I don't know. It looks cool. It shows you the distribution still, but I think it's doing like a sort of boundary on the values. I don't quite understand how we're calculating the shadow histogram. I do understand it's a density of where things are at, but it's kind of smoothing it out, I think, a little bit. Don't do it. Still cool, though. So with that, we have our picture. I think we're good on that. I like clicking buttons, seeing what they do. Provide a short write-up explaining the shape and appropriate center and spread for the distribution. So shape. Going all the way back to shape. Shape is really what or what? When you think about the shape of a histogram, shape deals with modality, and this is very clearly unimodal. The modality right here, boom. And then also we have skew, and this is very clearly right skew because we got our monster man. He's making a return right here. Right to the high, left to the low, whatever way the monster man's tail goes. That's the high side of the distribution. So we've got a unimodal right skewed distribution, and then we've got gaps in the data, and we've got extreme outliers and light outliers. Think about everything we can say right there, with the most extreme outlier being 18,398. So there is a lot to say of this unimodal right skewed distribution with multiple extreme outliers. Looks to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Write up your own interpretation of it, but I've got sure of what's going on right here with this distribution. So very clearly, due to the skew, due to the outliers, the proper measure of center and proper measure of spread will be what? The proper measure of center and the proper measure of spread will be what? Due to the skew, due to the outliers, The proper measure of center and spread are definitely going to be what? It's going to be the median and the IQR. The IQR is the distance between Q3 and Q1, which represents the middle 50% of the data. The median is the 50th percentile of diamond prices. The median and IQR. And so what I've done is I've drawn some pictures to show you when you would generally use mean and standard deviation. If you look right here at the very top, this is a general normal curve. I tried to draw one with a little bit of skew, not too much skew. This is still a symmetric distribution that's bimodal, and this is a uniform distribution. Probably your best bet, these are the ideals up here at the top. Like your ideal scenario for using these are those. Nothing wrong with left skew on the bottom, but the best time to use mean and standard deviation is when your data is mostly normal. If you do have extreme outliers, though, you're going to be going towards median and IQR. If you do have left skew or right skew, you're going to be going towards median and IQR. So even if you have something that's normal but has outliers, depends on how extreme the outliers are, so it does become a little bit subjective. But things like minor skew, you would use median and standard deviation if there's not a very strong skew, if it's mostly normal. So you have to think about which of these do you fall into, and it does become a little bit confusing sometimes between, you have things that are iffy. Just try to make a strong case, because at what point is it skewed enough, or at what point are the outliers large enough that we consider not using mean and standard deviation? So there is that sort of iffiness, but here's the thing. My data is not iffy. This is a strong skew with strong outliers. Very clearly, this is the answer right here. So I fell into one of those that worked really well for knowing which one to use. Now, if you want to calculate the IQR, if you want to do it by hand, it's just going to be Q3 minus Q1. So you could go over here and do Q3, which is the 75th percentile, minus there. So there's the IQR. But you can also go right here and go to customize summary statistics and just add in the interquartile range. And now we've got the IQR right there. And that's the same value we calculated by hand. Now, what's important is don't just say the mean is this. The mean represents the average price of diamonds from this data set. The standard deviation is a metric of spread around the average price of diamonds. The median, which then quote the value too, give the values. The median, which represents the 50th percentile of diamond prices, is 1,861. The IQR represents the spread of the middle 50% of diamond prices. So if you notice, I'm not just saying median this, IQR this, and you will lose points in your report if you just say the mean is this or the median is this. But don't do the mean and median. You should only do, oops, wrong graphic right there. You should only do median and IQR or mean and standard deviation. So once again, will you use all of these values? Will you use all of those values right there? Will you show and interpret all of those values? Will you show and interpret the mean, the standard deviation, the median, the IQR? No. You will pick the appropriate measure. So when interpreting appropriate measure of center and spread right there, don't interpret mean and standard deviation, median, IQR. Pick the appropriate one and interpret it properly. Next, create a confidence interval. Nice and easy. So now all we have to do is make a confidence interval, and you can't use 95%. So if you notice, I already have the 95% confidence interval. Let's go ahead and show how to make a confidence interval again. We'll go here to confidence interval, select something other than 95. You can go to the other and put in point something, and you'll get something other than 95. I'm using 95 because you can't. So for 1,000 points, should you use 95% confidence intervals? For 1,000 points, that's why I'm pausing here, because I don't want people to lose points or do the project incorrectly. Should you use 95% confidence intervals? For 1,000 points, should you do 95% confidence intervals? Should you do that? The answer is a resounding no. Don't do 95% confidence intervals. You will not get full credit. I am doing it because you have to do something else. Do not do 95% confidence intervals. Do not do them. Please don't watch the video on mute. Someone clicked that button. Oh no. Okay. So now that we have this, the 95% confidence interval, we're going back to our 46 document, we are actually doing the equation over here on the right. So if you look at this equation right here, the y bar plus or minus t star n minus 1 with s over square root of n, that is being solved for you right there. That is the interval it creates. It's important to know where it comes from in the output. So let's go grab our output over here. And the output actually has all the information, and we could solve the majority of this with the output. So there it is right there. Let me make this a little bit smaller. Good. Okay. Let me disappear. The mean is y bar, standard deviation, SE y bar, which is equal to S over square root of n. That is the upper, that is the lower. Yep, it does put it in that order this time. That's n, lowercase n, that's the IQR. And degrees of freedom equals to 1.3 or 132. Good to see you here, Sheena. And so we have our notation right there. So we could actually just plug in the values and you could solve this out yourself. The t statistic, you would need to go to the apps. Once again, it's going to be about 1.973 or so. Good. We'll see if we got a good guess right there. 1.973, 132 degrees of freedom. Go over to your t. And on the t, enter in 132 degrees of freedom, 95. So it's 1.978 right there. Very close to 1.96 because of the high degrees of freedom. Remember, the more degrees of freedom the t has, the more normal it becomes. So it'll approach 1.96 as degrees of freedom increase. It'll go towards, but never quite get to 1.96. Technically, it's 1.95996 on the normal. Just if anyone wants the technical on this. 1.95996. There it is. And there's even more digits, but the t will approach the z with more degrees of freedom. So the t and the z are pretty similar at this point. Once again, we're just talking about the notation up here, the sample mean, the sample standard deviation, the standard error of the mean, which is s over square root of n, the upper of the interval, the lower of the interval, the sample size, the interquartile range, and the degrees of freedom being n minus 1 could all be input into this equation, and JMP is doing the work for us to find the estimate, which right here is the sample mean, and there's the lower and the upper of the interval. So now that we have this, the important part becomes, how do we interpret the interval? I am blank % confident that the true, and then we say something, is contained in the interval blank to blank. So this part is where people make mistakes. They put proportion where it shouldn't be. They put mean, difference between means. But think what we're doing. We're doing a t-test where we're testing or creating an interval to estimate the true mean. So with this, we're trying to understand the true mean price of diamonds. So I am 95% confident the true mean price of diamonds at our store is contained in the interval 2,638.884 to 3,939.461. And it's important to see where the components go, where we have the % confidence, where we have the lower of the interval, and we have the upper, and then we have the context of what we're talking about, the mean price of diamonds, and that would need to go into there, the true mean price of diamonds. Now, this is the sample mean. Remember, the sample mean is the estimate of the truth. So it's even telling you right there that this is the estimate of the truth, and we're 95% confident that the truth is contained in this interval. So very important right there, and I think that does it for this part. That is the t-test, or the t-interval right there. That is everything you need to do for 20 points right there. And now we're to side-by-side box plots. So let's mark this in the video right here. They've only got 2 more parts. Woo! Or there's future research. There we go. We got 3 more parts. Okay, so let's do side-by-side box plots. Here we go. 109, 33, step 201 project, side-by-side box plots. And the question is, I'm 95% confident, and then make sure if he's a good answers right there. Make sure to give the context, not just the true mean though, the true mean of what? What are we analyzing? Fiza, 1,000 points. Thank you for being here and answering these questions. Make sure to give the context, not just the true mean of what? And then think, because sometimes we'll say the true proportion of the mean price of diamonds. It's just true mean though, because we're analyzing a quantitative variable. Proportions are for categorical variables. So great work and good practice. 1,000 points right there. Using the quantitative variable and the categorical variable from the previous section, Create a side-by-side box plot, include a screenshot of the visualization, and include the 5-number summary. Provide a short write-up explaining and describing the nature of the relationship between the box plots, such as whether they are independent or not, and how that can be determined from the visualization. Make sure to use numeric backing to support your explanation. So this is kind of, not quite, but kind of the two-sample t-test. Remember, in the two-sample t-test, we talk about taking a categorical variable, something like the cut of a diamond. So we've got categories right here, this amount of people in this group, this amount of people in this group, and then we're analyzing it based on a quantitative y variable. So in your data right here, I have 2 types of diamonds. That's group 1, group 2, so that's 2 samples. And then with the 2 samples, I'm going to compare them on price. So go here to graph builder. Graph builder. Under graph builder, you want to take the quantitative variable. That means it needs to be blue. So you want the blue variable right here that you use. Great job, Savannah. And drop it right here. Now, if you notice, that's not a box plot yet. That's kind of a dot plot. Yeah, it is a dot plot. Not a big fan of dot plots. Click up here to the box plot option to turn it into box plot. Now it's a box plot. But this is still just a quantitative distribution. It's just a box plot. We don't want a box plot. We want side-by-side box plots. Now, side-by-side box plots are when you have a categorical X. A singular box plot is just one quantitative Y variable, but side-by-side box plots break it apart based on a categorical X. So now we go here to our 2 level, which we used originally, the cut of a diamond, and put that right here on the X-axis and take a look. Now we have side-by-side box plots. We need to add in the 5-number summary, so I'm going to disappear here. To add in the 5-number summary, just click 5num right there. That's the 5-number summary, it just says 5. So that's the 5-number summary for the box plot. Now you need to make sure you click done. Click done. You do not want a screenshot like this. No. This is no. Where's my drawing? No. That is not the right screenshot. Click done. Now I don't also want it this big. I'm going to adjust it to get it the way I want it. Remember to click done. Savannah, you rock right there. Make sure to click done. Very important. And that is how I want it displayed. I think you can just, you can just adjust the window, I think, and it will augment to the window. Make it bigger, it will augment. So you can do that however you want it, but just make it nice and neat. Get a good screenshot, and then let's take a look right here. What is the first thing you notice about the very good price? What is the first thing you notice about the very good price? The very good price, the max or the median, kind of the typical value of very good. If you just compare these, the very good has a much higher median, the 50th percentile. These values might be kind of similar. That's similar-esque. But really the upper end of the distribution is quite different. And citing these values, and so it looks to me that there's definitely, that the very good looks to have a lot higher prices of diamonds to me. And this is comparing the quantiles, the medians, the Q3s look to be very different. And I'd cite these values. The min, the Q1s look to be kind of similar. Also, the max prices, like the outliers, are kind of similar. Also, there's a gap right here. And so right here, these look to show some sort of association. Now, this is an association. So associated. If there's no association, your box plots are going to look more like this. Now, they don't have to look exactly like this, but the more they line up, like they could look something like this right here. I'm just drawing different examples. The more they line up with each other, like the more these, and our green is for the same, the more these parts of them line up, the more similar they are. The more there could be outliers, but the more similar they are. So notice how this is where they line up over here. They line up on these green parts, but then they don't line up there. And these are the same numbers that are up above because the quantiles are given up above. So I'm showing how they don't line up by showing this right here. And then up here at the very top with the maximum values, they also kind of line up. So notice we could do the same sort of highlighting to show where they line up or don't line up right there. And you notice down here, these kind of line up perfectly on all the mins, the Q1s, the medians, the Q3s, and the maxes. So the more they line up, the more independent they are, as in there's not an association, and the more they don't line up, the more of an association there is. It's up to you, and you want to quote the values to talk about how associated they are or not associated. I do want to do a small, because that's basically it, just quoting the values, making the graphic, talking about what you see or don't see, and then explaining in your own words why you think there is an association, i.e. some sort of dependency, or you think there's not an association. I do want to mention, though, that with this data right here, we are basically kind of doing almost a two-sample t-test. The two-sample t-test, which is not required, don't do this portion, is when you do the categorical variable down here on the X. So we have the cut of the diamond, and then the price, don't do this portion. And right here, you'll notice we can make a t-test right here and analyze the differences. There's actually not a differences between the means. There's a difference between the medians. Now, this goes beyond stat 1, but we can actually test differences in medians right here by going down to the, where is it at? Non-parametric median test right there. And we actually don't even find evidence of difference between the medians. And why do we not find evidence of difference between the medians? Well, there's two different tests right here, and the two different tests come back with high p-values where we do not reject the null that the medians are the same. So that's interesting. Wow, didn't expect that. So once again, do not do this portion, but Jump can do the analysis for you to test differences in medians, differences in means, and the differences in medians is found under what we call non-parametric tests right there. Wilcoxon rank test doesn't even come back as significant. There it is right there. Is it the Wilcoxon? Man, really? That's interesting. Even I'm shocked by this. That's interesting. But once again, don't do that portion. That's just a bunch of different tests, and I'm kind of shocked. I thought there was an association, but statistically there's not. Oh, I'm down to a 133 sample size, so statistical power is kind of low. All that fun statistical jargon. Sometimes even statistics shocks me. That's the fun part of stats. Well, once again, make sure to read over the rubric, provide your explanations, talk about the box plots, and let Jump do the analysis for you. But now we are going to our final bit of analysis right here, the regression. And this goes back to chapter 7. Stat 201 project. Okay, so what is regression? When we are doing regression, very specifically, regression used to analyze the relationship between, maybe we should specify linear regression for those wondering. Someone's going to be like, what about logistic? Between two quantitative variables by fitting a line through the data, by fitting the line of best fit, by fitting the line of best fit through the data. So this means we're making scatter plots right here. We got a little QQ straight enough, no outliers, plot doesn't thicken. We got a quantitative variable here, quantitative variable here. We got some data. And then with the data right here, we are fitting the line to it. And then we can also turn this into a residual plot, which we will be doing. A residual plot is how much we miss by. And classically, I like to say that the residual plot is just taking the, or if you take the data, make it flat, you will get a residual plot right there. And the residual plot is going to show you how far things are above or below the line. So that's going to be the residual plot showing you the distance you miss by when you use the line of best fit to predict data. So let's take a look at what they're asking us to do. Select another quantitative variable that you want to see if it has a relationship with the first quantitative variable you chose. So I am kind of stuck on my data, but that's all right. I was analyzing price, so I'll have to see if caret explains price. I think we're going to use this as the y variable of interest, but notice how we have two quantitative variables. Make sure you have two quantitative variables to do linear regression. Create a scatter plot, identify the form, direction, form, and unusual features. I usually say strength, direction, form, and unusual features. Clearly note any outliers that may exist in the scatter plot And you will leave these data points in the analysis, but you must clearly identify any unusual features or outliers. And does it say, it doesn't say which has to be the Y, but I'm going to try to explain price because my company's interested in price. So here's how to create the scatter plot. Analyze. Fit Y by X. Now we're going to put price as the Y variable of interest. I want to understand why diamonds are a certain price. Does carrots explain, see how it's X, does carrots explain why diamonds are a certain price? Good way to read it right there. And here we go. Whoa, ooh, there's a bend. This is kind of some interesting data. So here's our scatter plot. Some people have already asked me, do we need to take a picture of the scatter plot and then with the fitted line? I would just fit the line and then not use the original picture. The line's going to also be on here. Now, the most extreme outliers I see, it also might be some heteroscedasticity. That's, plot thickening. So you notice here, it's a little tighter around the line on the bottom. And then at the top, it is getting wider. So I'd probably mention that in my unusual features. There's so much, right? But it's good. We're almost done. And so this is the last bit right here. And with this, here's what you can do if you see outliers. If you see outliers, highlight the outlier, if there's multiple ones, go here to rows, and under rows, go to, markers, put a little star on it, then go to rows, and go to colors, and mark it red. Now you notice it kind of stands out. I think we can also increase the size of it. So rows, I thought we could. So there we are. We've got it kind of marked. That's my most extreme outlier. No, you got this. How far are you into it, Jesse? These are the longer portions. This is the last portion right here before we talk about future research. But think we've got our graphic right now. And so we have the star right there with the, and look, we can read about it. We can even mark it right here so we could remember it. So if we only have one, oh, no worries. Think about this. This is a diamond that costs what? Think about why it's an outlier. Think it has a very positive residual. That diamond right there, what? Costs a lot more than we would have wanted it to be. It costs $16,599. Someone saved $1 right there. That diamond costs a lot more than we would have predicted it to be. We would have predicted it probably somewhere here around $10,000. We could find out its residual by going right here and going to plot residuals. Excuse me, I have to go right here and go to plot residuals. We will need this, so let's go ahead and go to plot residuals. And plotting the residuals, you can see that it costs, is going to tell us the residual. I wish it would. We're going to take the first residual plot, so we could do this right here. I'm going to deselect the data points, and wow. Does anyone see, other than the heteroscedastic? Yeah, it's okay if there's no association. Just make sure to explain that and quote the values. Make sure to explain it and quote the values. You don't have to find an association. You would just explain there is not one and quote the values to give your reasoning. So it's not bad if there's no association. You would just explain that and quote the values to show that you don't see evidence of an association. So when you look at this right here, it could be random. So each person's data is going to look differently. If your data doesn't show an association, quote the values. So, because that's why I kind of did this right here, because I don't know how your data will look. For the last portion really quickly, what is the key thing to getting the points right here? It's quoting the values and then letting someone know whether you think there's an association or not. So if you see that the values really line up, you would still quote the values and talk about how they're similar. You might not have to quote all of them, but you could give some examples of what's similar in the data and then talk about how the values line up and how you think there's not an association. But for me, I would quote the values right here, letting them know the big differences I see, maybe even subtract these to say that the medians have a difference of 1,070, subtract and get the actual difference. And you can see it right here in the box plots with the center lines showing that I think there is an association. So just visually speaking, I did think there was an association. So does that make sense right there? Like, quote the values, let someone know why you think you're seeing this. The more the box plots line up, the less of an association. The more they don't line up, the more of an association you would think there is. And so with this right here, let's see what they're asking about the regression. Let's see what they're asking. Okay, the questions are: identify the direction, form, and unusual features. The direction just means, does the scatter plot go up or down? Very clearly, the direction is what? So it says identify the direction. Very clearly, the direction of this scatter plot is what? Very clearly, the direction is what? Positive, right? Hey, Caroline, good to see you. The direction is positive. Does it go up or down? Yours might be, if yours is flat, say it doesn't really go up or down. It's flat. So let us know, does it go up, down, or doesn't really go in either direction? Now it says the form. The form is either linear or nonlinear. Now here's the thing. You might think the line does pretty well, but looking at the residual plot down here, so if you look at the residual plot, you can actually see a big bend in the data. We'll take those pictures here in a moment. So I would probably, first off, I would take for this, here's my picture up here. I would take this as my screenshot. There's screenshot number 1. Pretty much, Savannah, right there. Yep. Very similar to the data analytics. So it's kind of reviewing, getting you ready for the final tools and techniques. So I would take this as the screenshot as I talk about it. I would say it looks mostly linear, but there might be some bend. So it is positive, mostly linear, but there might be some bend to it. And over here, unusual features, I would definitely quote the value we see right there of that outlier right there. So the outlier right there. Also, there is a little bit of spread in the data. There's some plot thickening I'm noticing. So the plot thickening being marked in yellow right there. And I do see a little bit of a bend in the data, maybe indicating some non-linearity. So does that make sense how I've talked about the direction of it, the form of it, the unusual features? I've also clearly talked about any outliers. You will leave those data points in, but we are identifying the outliers right there. We've performed the regression analysis to evaluate the fourth condition for plot thickening right here by the residual plot. So you will now need the following. You will need this plot right here. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller because I don't like huge pictures in my output. So there is my residual plot. And what is clear in this residual plot? Is it even more clear now that there is an issue with what? And I'm not talking about the linearity. Well, technically, it doesn't go down to there. I'm talking about the what condition right now. There's plot thickening. Yep, there is plot thickening. If you look at the spread of the data, it's definitely getting wider. There's also nonlinearity. Ignore that it goes in a swirly pattern. We're concerned right now about the thickness just for this condition, and the predictive power of the model is getting worse. Think about this. It's easier, like you would have more accurate predictions for smaller diamonds, or you'd have more accurate predictions for larger diamonds. So where would you have more accurate predictions? For smaller diamonds or larger diamonds? Your predictions would be more accurate for what are diamonds? And this is what plot thickening is. It's change in strength of the model. So would you be more accurate for the smaller diamonds or for the larger diamonds? And so the red line is the predictions, and the dots are the actual values. So look at the dots down here and look at the dots over here. The model is more accurate, stronger for smaller diamonds. For the larger diamonds, it has a larger typical miss, and we do not like that. RMSE. So you can see right here, stronger, it's better. Yep, see, the residuals are smaller. See, they're towards the center. When you go here, it's the larger residuals, the more negative, more positive. So this definitely doesn't pass the fourth condition right there. In your write-up of the analysis, include the 4 conditions for regression, whether or not the conditions pass or fail, what leads to your conclusion. Also evaluate if it's statistically significant. So what are the 4 conditions for regression? To get the residual plot, I'll show you how to do that again. Residual plot is found by clicking the linear fit and going to plot residuals right there. Yep, right here. So click after making your linear fit, go to plot residuals. After going to your linear fit, plot residuals. So the 4 conditions for regression are QQ straight enough, no outliers, plot doesn't thicken. QQ straight enough, no outliers, plot doesn't thicken. Now, I'd probably write it out a little bit better than that for the graders, but QQ, don't write QQ, explain what it means we have 2 quantitative variables. And I want to show that a little bit better by actually taking the name of the variable on the bottom right there. So very clearly, QQ is passed because, just explain, we have two quantitative variables. Straight enough, yep. And so here's the problem. This is iffy because there is a bend, especially exhibited down there. If you notice, it kind of bends. There are ways. So let me give the warning here again. Don't do what Brian's about to do. There are ways to do this. So I do like to show these things, especially at the end of the semester. There's ways to fit nonlinear relationships like a polynomial. Now you notice the polynomial brings it up to an R squared of 90.1, where the original data, oh no, the polynomial brings it up to 91.8% of the variation explained. So you can fit nonlinear trends in the data. So that's one thing you can do if you have bends in your data, is fit a polynomial trend. Another thing you can do is look at the lack of fit, which tests to see, the null hypothesis for the lack of fit is that the line is the proper fit. So since the null is that the line is the proper fit, it's kind of like the normal is the proper distribution, very similar to testing if the normal is a good fit. We have evidence of a lack of fit because of the low p-value. We reject that the line is a good fit. So there is strong evidence, statistically speaking, if I'm to go to a higher level for this class, that the line is not a good fit. The polynomial model does better on R squared, and the lack of fit test comes back statistically significant, suggesting that there is a lack of fit in the data. We have evidence of it. So for this class only, you're looking to see, does your line go through the data well? So when it's good, you will generally see the line go through the middle of the data. When it's bad, you will see the line or the data curving around the line. So this is bad and this is good. It's a little subjective right now. You don't have to do the higher level analytics, but straight enough means it's generally modeled by a straight relationship, which is a line. No outliers. So we do have issues right here. I would quote the value. We've got that right there. So that's our no outliers. We want there to be no outliers, but there is one, and I would quote that value. Last but not least, plot doesn't thicken. I like to say plot doesn't thicken, does not thicken. And we do have issues of plot does not thicken exhibited by the residual plot. And that's going to be where you're seeing it get wider as you go through the model right here. So you're seeing this widening of the data around the predicted points. So there is a problem of plot thickening. And once again, your much better view of that is to go down here to the residual plot, and you can really see how tight this is right here. And then it starts to get weaker as you go through the model, i.e. And once again, you can also really see the bend in the data. If I do this, it's even more apparent that there's this kind of like funnel shape to the data. And yeah, so that is how we would do the 4 conditions. QQ, 2 quantitative variables, straight enough, no outliers, plot doesn't thicken. Don't write QQ in your report, though. Explain what the condition is about there being 2 quantitative variables, and we satisfy that by there being a scatter plot, or if you have 2 quantitative variables, you will have a scatter plot. Those are the conditions. 4 conditions, whether or not the conditions are met or passed. Be very clear. Truthfully, with mine, I'm most concerned about the non-linear. Ooh, yeah, this has problems. My regression has problems. There's problems with straight enough. There's problems with there being no outliers. You'll use your first one. The first one you pick is the one you did. So this is the one you've done, and this is any. So you will pick a second one, which can be any one. The first one you pick, yes, acknowledge them and quote them by number. Acknowledge the outliers and quote their values. This means row 58, the 58th diamond has a caret value of this and a price of this, and that is an outlier right there. I hovered over it and I was able to tell the value. Yep. So the first one is the one you've been using, and the second one is any one you want right there. And also evaluate if the regression model is statistically significant or not by using and stating an appropriate p-value. If the model is statistically significant, include the interpretation of the R squared as a way to discuss. Well, that's pretty good. So this is gonna be interesting. So some people are not going to include the R squared. I'm not against, just be careful. The graders should technically not take points off if you don't include the R squared, if your model's not statistically significant. So for 1,000 points, statistical significance of the line is the p-value of the what? A review from chapter 7 right here. Statistical significance of the line is the p-value of the what? Statistical significance of the line is the p-value of the what? Yours is worse. Statistical significance of the line. Of the X variable. Perfect job, Jesse, right there. I'll give you more points here in a moment. The p-value of the slope. So the statistical significance of the model is that. It is not this. That is the intercept's significance. We have evidence the intercept is not 0. So intercept not being 0 would look like the following. Here's a model that has an intercept that's not 0, but it's flat. Here's a model that has a slope of 0, a slope that's not 0, but the intercept is 0. The XY relationship is the X variable's relationship with Y, which is the slope of the line. So this is the value of B0, and we have evidence the value of B0 is not equal to 0, or B1. I said B0. I was talking about 0 values. B1 is not equal to 0. This is B0 where the intercept is, and this is B0 over here, but this is a B1 equal to 0, and this is a B1 not equal to 0 because the slope is not flat. Yeah, that's got it. There's a lot of other cool things, like if you want to take right here and look at other values, there's a lot to look at right here. Like, what if we were to square? I'll do one last thing. Don't do this on your report. There's one less. If mine is red, that means jump will star the things that are statistically significant, meaning that there is a statistically significant relationship between caret and price, that caret explains a portion of the variation in price unlikely by random chance, i.e. we think, yeah, don't do this next thing in the report. This is just a cool fun fact. Can you square this in your head, Jesse? No, I'm not going to square it in my head. I'm doing a trick. This is about 1203, or about 1204. How'd I do that? Interestingly, so this F statistic right here is the square of the T. That F is the square of the T. So think about this. If this F, the analysis of variance, which is the amount of variation we've explained from the total, going from the naive model, 320 concepts, if this F and T are related, this p-value right here, if you'll have to look really closely, this p-value says 6.72, if you can read that right there. 6.72. This p-value right here, 6.72. It's the same p-value. The tests mechanically work the same in the univariate world. A lot to go into on details on that. But that p-value right there is the same as this p-value. But hover over this p-value and it's 1.4. That's not the same p-value. The analysis of variance, just because we're finishing off right here, is the reduction of variation from the naive model. And you might be wondering, we need to interpret R squared, right? Well, if I go here and do 1.8, if I do 17111435514, don't do this, divided by 18973248663, 90.18. And that's the value of R squared. That is the total amount of variation our model explains. So the sums of squares is the amount of variation we explained from the total that existed from the naive model, and the remaining errors from the residuals, the sum of the squared residuals, which residuals are errors. Don't do all that. Why would you not calculate R squared by hand? Because R squared's right there for you. R squared is right there on the screen, so you don't need to calculate it by hand. You don't need to know the analysis of variance right now, because it's done for you. So with that, this means that knowing the caret of a diamond explains 90.18% of the price. Do you think caret is very important? Like when someone talks about the caret of their diamond, someone's like, I got a 3-carat diamond. What would you think pretty quickly? We know already this in our minds that we wouldn't know the 90.18%, but 90.18% of the variation in price of a diamond is explained by caret of a diamond. So caret explains 90.18% of the variation in the price of a diamond. Someone says, I got a 3-carat diamond. What would you think immediately? You'd be like, that must be a what? What would you think? Someone says, it's probably really expensive, right? Because we know that there's this relationship where the carat of a diamond would explain a lot of the price. Someone's like, I only got a 0.1 carat diamond. You're like, it's probably not really expensive. We're like, it's the rarest diamond in the world. You're like, whoa, that'd be a different X variable. But with this right here, we know, or fake. Well, that would be actually Jesse right there. That is logistic regression. And you know what? Here we'll end with that, Jesse, after I explain the future research. And so, Jesse, what you've just done right there is you've actually brought us to future research. I think, let me make sure we've said everything here. Make sure to explain the R squared if your model is significant. We just did it right there. 90.18% of the variation in the price of a diamond is explained by the carat of a diamond. That's a lot of variation, which I think is very statistically significant, because when you think about it, if someone says to me they have a 3-carat diamond, well, 90% of the price is explained by how big the diamond is. So it seems to me a lot of the variation, like the majority, is explained by just the size of a diamond. Over 90%. Put that in your own words, whatever your context is. But now we get to future research, and just make a neat assignment at the end. So here's the thing. You talked about the diamond being fake. Do we currently have, so let me put here future research. Do we currently have data on diamonds being fake in our data set? Do we currently have a variable where we had an expert come in and analyze the diamonds to see if the diamonds were fake? Do we currently have that variable of fake or not fake? We don't. So maybe we might want to have an expert come in and evaluate the diamonds and look to see if they're fake or not fake. And maybe we might find out that there's a relationship with the size of our diamonds where they're more likely to be fake if there are larger diamonds. So the carat is the size of a diamond. So this is what you'd want to write up. You'd want to put in your own ideas of what you're doing. So let's put here real or fake. And watch this, Jesse. This is what's cool. We haven't done this yet. Don't make fake data like I'm making right now. This is not future research. This is like what we'd find out in the future. So this is like me pretending that we've gone out and gotten more data, which I would explain our goal of bringing in an expert. You don't have to bring in some other person. Don't write exactly what I write. Don't say we're going to bring in such and such person. This was our idea for the data right here. Don't do what Brian is doing. Did I give you those 1,000? I didn't give you the 1,000 yet, Jesse. Let me give you 2,000 for repeatedly saying things like that. Don't do what Brian's doing right now. The point is you're going to explain this to people. And this is an analysis we haven't done yet. This is something cool that I wanted to show, because we've got, is the diamond real or fake? And that's a categorical Y. And we've got here the carat of a diamond. And so, Jesse, it's a categorical Y. So it's a categorical Y and a quantitative X. What analysis are we about to do? For another 1,000 points, this is some future research stuff right here. It's a categorical Y and a quantitative X. What analysis are you about to see on the screen? So use the graphic to figure out categorical Y, quantitative X. Brian is about to perform a what? Hint, it's crossed out. Logistic regression. Boom. Exactly. PubShark even agrees. So logistic regression predicts the probability of something. And think about this. Just, we haven't done this analysis yet. This is not something you're doing in Stat Tool 1. But if you look at this, diamonds that are larger have a larger probability of being fake. The probability of being fake increases, because that's the top portion, as we see larger diamonds. So maybe we'd find this out via future research. Once again, you're not doing this analysis, but this is what's called logistic. Yeah, this has the sigmoidal curve. We call that the sigmoidal S-shaped curve. I don't have the notes open from a logistic from the 320 class, but this is the sigmoidal S-shaped curve, which predicts probabilities between 0 and 1 of something being fake or real or whatever we're wanting. Do I still have, we'll end with this, but do I still have, because I taught 320 between this, so I feel like there should be 320 notes in here somewhere. Do we not do drawings in 320? It's a good place to end. It's kind of a future idea. These are the ideas you want to bring to the company that we haven't thought of yet. So you are bringing new ideas that we have not tackled yet and things we have not considered. So much work. Tons of work. Why do we want to draw? I guess we draw on the slides. I had a really good drawing for logistic. But this is new ideas, once again, that you have not brought to the company yet that you want to do. These are, we're not going to make action items from this. Well, I mean, like, maybe we should look into this. Maybe we should look into that. Maybe we haven't done this. Maybe we consider this. But once again, let's read over what it says. We'll look at the rubric. Finally, give your ideas for future research. It's also right to mention briefly what's in the report. but don't use this section to go through results again because I've already read your report. Talk about new ideas about collecting data or things like that. The company should investigate, things that might benefit the company. This section covers ideas that go beyond your report, i.e. we didn't collect on this, so let's start looking at it. So a lot of cool stuff right there, and we really have a full video right here on how to do the project. I think this right here, we'll save it. I think this should pretty much walk people through what you need to do. Each section is somewhere between 10 to 20, 25 minutes, depending if it's a longer section. And also remember, this is kind of a review of all the topics. So it's not just, you're welcome, Jesse. So once again, I didn't want to just show how to do everything. I wanted to also explain the concepts like regression, one sample T, one sample Z, side-by-side box plots, even how that relates to two sample T. So once again, look at your rubric. You're welcome, Isabella and Fiza. Thank you everyone so much for being here. Once again, look at exactly what it's asking in the rubric. This video shows you how to do everything. And also we did concept review, kind of getting you ready for the final. So maybe we want to understand the concepts a little bit better too. Well, let's do one of our fun outros right here. We haven't done one of these outros in a little while here. We'll go to this one here. Till next time. Bye everyone. Bye. We've almost got these new intros ready. We're almost there.
This has been going for like 20 hours.
This ends now.